Welcome to episode 353 of the Shared Security Podcast. And this week, we're talking about the February 2024 ransomware attack that caused the largest ever known data breach of protected health information, the Change Healthcare breach. So why talk about this now? Well, notifications have gone out to 100 million Americans. That's Americans, not Canadians. I want to be very clear about that. So Scott, congratulations. You don't.
Yeah, we don't have healthcare data breaches up here.
Yes, that's right. None, zero. And I think Kevin and myself are part of that 100 million people. Yeah. I know I got my letter in the mail.
Yep.
So did my entire family. So I'm, ecstatic as usual.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that. And then in our Where Much segment, Scott is going to talk about something called mortgage wire fraud. What is it and what you need to be aware of if you're purchasing real estate? Because now this is something a little bit close to home, no pun intended for me, since I have recently purchased some real estate and I was warned several times by my realtor and others that you need to be aware of wire fraud. And so we'll share some information.
Yeah, it should be an eye-opening session.
Yeah. So joining me for these stories are my illustrious co-hosts, Scott Wright and Kevin Johnson. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, good morning. I'm wearing my Haunted Mansion shirt because of today.
Oh, yes.
And that is another shirt from the cult.
It is another shirt from the cult.
I'm wearing my orange shirt, as you can tell.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
You're the top of a pumpkin. That's
true. Yes.
It is Halloween. Happy Halloween.
That's why Chewy's not behind me because he's packed up to go home to wear while I'm handing out candy.
Yeah. Today I decided to dress up as a podcast host. So,
ooh, good choice.
Scary, very scary.
Very scary. Yes. I get no awards for my costume this year. So let's talk about Change Healthcare. This, as I mentioned, this is a breach that happened back in February of 2024. It is the largest healthcare breach in American history. I'm saying American history because not world history. Yeah. Well, maybe world history, actually. I don't know, but it's a big one.
Yeah.
And this is the one that there was a lot of controversy over. Well, first of all, they paid the ransom. Then the ransom was apparently stolen by another ransomware group.
Yeah.
And there was infighting between ransomware groups about the ransom, and it was a complete mess. I mean, this actually shut down the back-end pharmacy network back earlier this year and caused all kinds of problems for people needing to fill prescriptions and insurers that needed to get paid, and it just was a complete nightmare. I know people that were affected by this that couldn't get their prescriptions filled, and that caused a lot of problems. So the latest news is that the announcement came out, or not the announcement, the letters. People that were affected by this, you got a letter, and of course they are graciously giving you identity theft protection services. Yep. It seems like a broken record. How many times have we heard that, guys?
Yeah. It's interesting that there's, I think they're saying now indirectly and directly $2.5 billion in total losses, which is pretty amazing. And the total ransom actually was paid $22 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's like over 100 times the ransom value that the breach cost. And they paid the ransom and didn't get the data back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good example of, I mean, we always talk about that, right? Of like, should you pay the ransom or shouldn't you pay the ransom? And I don't know. I guess this is another use case of maybe you shouldn't pay the ransom, but very debatable.
Yeah.
But
there are some mentions in the story also about the fact that somebody's identified that it could have been caused by a Citrix connection issue that was, I guess, hijacked or stolen credentials.
No two-factor authentication.
No MFA. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you also have to think about, this is Change Healthcare is part of United Health Group, which is a giant, healthcare insurance company. they've acquired a lot of companies over the years, and we see this all the time when when I was consulting, and Kevin, you probably see this a lot with acquisitions. It's just very hard to maintain overall security, especially when there's new companies that you purchase, and it's a very complicated problem.
Yeah.
So
I think that for me, I think one of the interesting parts of this is this was a healthcare system that most people affected by the breach, if not all people affected by the breach, didn't know it existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like that jumping back years, right? When I switched jobs and started working for Bank of America, when I went to sign up for my 401k, and I had never had a 401k before, I went to register with Merrill Lynch and couldn't because I had an existing account.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd never had a 401k. And I found out what had happened was a previous employer in setting up their 401k had, as is normal, sent every potential employee's data over. Merrill created all the accounts all I had to do was activate it. But of course I never did. So now it's sitting there floating. And this is an even bigger case of that, right? Like,
Wow.
My doctor's office or whatever uses this system, and that system uses this or what have you. And all of a sudden I'm affected by a breach that has really significant data.
Yeah.
How do you protect yourself against that? And the answer is, in my opinion, you can't. Which means now you have to start paying attention to every breach, because back in February, when this was originally announced, while I was worried about the breach because of the problems that happened, I had no concern about my data, right? Like, I haven't used that. Why would they have my data?
Yeah. It's becoming a bigger problem these days. You don't know who has your data.
That's right. And it looks like, there was an update. Or actually, one thing that I thought in this article this is an article from Brian Krebs, who, he's always reporting on really good stuff. And one of the things that he mentions that everybody should do is to freeze your credit with the 3 credit agencies as a way to prevent identity theft around these types of breaches, right? We've mentioned this before. We'll, of course, link in the show notes the process to do this, but
for Americans.
For Americans, we excluding Canada, you
can't lock.
thing.
I can't lock my credit.
And I also recommend that you do that for your children as well, because there is a thing called child identity theft that happens too. So with all this personal information out there about you, this is something that highly recommended. I won't say it's relatively easy to do, because these credit bureaus send you through a bunch of loops, and they want you to buy their extra packages and all these other things, but you can do it, and a lot of them have apps to do it. Because I just had to purchase some real estate and I had to unfreeze my credit to do that, and I went through that process. But yeah, highly recommend that everybody that's in America does that. So let's get into our favorite segment, which is Aware Much?
I've missed that so much.
It's back.
Yes, gentlemen, in today's segment of Aware Much, we are providing some tips to help people, as Tom said, buying a home or property, avoid being scammed in a couple of ways. So these scams are typically classified, as Tom said, as a type of wire fraud, which is a broad class of crime. And it may not necessarily resonate with you, or you may not be aware of it. But there are a couple of ways that it's often conducted. And there have been an increasing number of stories that I've actually sent Tom a bunch of links around, the US, Australia, and I'm sure it happens here in Canada as well. But basically, people either losing their down payment or their closing payment, which is really painful. And when it comes to closing payments, what I think usually happens is that scammers target the law firms and real estate firms that manage many of the real estate transactions. And Tom can probably help us understand a little more about that process if you're going through it right now. But they either compromise the email accounts of the lawyers or real estate agents, or they sometimes manage to get enough information from whatever systems or even data sources about upcoming transactions, which could include things like the property details, the purchase amount, the lawyer's contact information, the company's email addresses that are used. And then they send emails to the buyer impersonating the buyer's lawyer with, perfectly replicated letters and, logos and everything to direct the buyer to send the closing amounts to the attacker. And they could be using a number of plausible reasons, maybe a change of closing date, new deadlines, but there's always a sense of urgency. So just want Tom to be careful, when he's out there looking for his new property.
Actually, I was made aware of this from our real estate agent who had said that she had two of her clients, that had fallen for this scam where they had sent their down payment.
Yeah.
We're talking like tens of thousands of dollars, and they wired that money to a fraudster overseas. And they thought that they were sending that money to their title company,
Right.
which is part of the process. And they all, in every case, it was actually the title company, the email logo, the email looked all legitimate, and it just had different wire information.
Yep.
And they just went to their bank, they created a wire transfer and then just sent it off. And then they call their title company, like, did you get my wire? And they're like, we didn't get any wire from you.
Yeah.
And they've been scammed.
Yeah.
So this is a very common thing. I was actually surprised how common it was, because we even had our banker. He said the same thing. He's like, make sure that when you get that notification from your title company, you call them on the phone and you verify everything in that email before you go to the bank to issue a wire. Yeah.
Yeah. And in Canada, we don't actually have direct communication between the buyer and the title company. It's really just your own lawyer. The lawyer takes care of working with the other lawyer and the other entities, and they wrap everything up, and we just pay the lawyer. But still, you could still be scammed in the same way by your lawyer impersonating you. So in many cases, people have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in that single transaction at the closing time, and they're left with nothing, no protection. Often insurance doesn't even cover it. Many cases, the law firms or the title insurance companies' insurance doesn't consider that to be something that's covered, which is really scary.
Yeah. So definitely something to be on the lookout for if you're purchasing a new property, and to be aware of it. But the way that she had described it, that even the most savvy people, even like us that look for things like this and are educated on it, could fall for something like that. But always do that due diligence.
It is really, really common. And I'm amazed more people don't talk about it.
Also, I didn't realize this, but it's actually common. I only heard about the closing payment being stolen, but now there's down payments being stolen. I think because it's easier, really. I mean, it's a smaller amount. It's earlier in the process. The buyer isn't necessarily as familiar with the people involved or the process. And it's probably easy to get someone to send $20,000, out of their line of credit or whatever. Whereas in Canada, we have to wait. And basically, as I said, the lawyer works with the banks. The banks send the money to the lawyer or whatever, or vice versa. But in the down payment scenario, you're just sending your money, right? And it can be done probably a lot less formally, which is scary. So just a few things there. In the articles that we're linking to, there's lots of tips that are really useful to read. But in general, review the exact process for the payments that will be scheduled ahead of time, who they're going to be from and to, including things like the electronic signature services like DocuSign and PandaDocs or whatever. Make sure you know which services are going to be used, because that could be a big clue. And have the contact information for all the stakeholders handy, just in case you get a request and you want to authenticate them, by calling them right away. So always watch for last minute changes involving payments or payment details. That's usually the biggest clue too. So this segment of Aware Much was brought to you by ClickArmor, the employee cyber confidence builder. And when your team needs effective security awareness training, ClickArmor provides interactive courses and assessments, as well as microlearning in a fun, gamified environment using proven psychological drivers that motivate employees to learn and remember. So visit clickarmor.ca for a free demo and trial, and see how easily gamified security training can improve your team's resilience. That's it for this installment of Aware Much.
Thank you, Scott. So before we get out of here, I did want to mention that if you've not seen the last episode that we did on AI-powered toilet cameras, you should definitely check that out because it is looking to be like one of the most viewed videos on our channel.
Why do so many people want to comment on the toilet story?
I don't know. There's like 13 comments right now. And it is probably one of our most popular episodes on YouTube right now. It's 1,300 views. It's some very good comments, actually. Some very laughable, but hey, maybe we should talk more about toilets on the show.
Maybe
guys.
we should
get that SEO.
It may also be my thumbnail because remember I joked about the thumbnail creation for this episode. And so if you see the thumbnail, it's, me and Kevin, and there's a big poop emoji in the middle. So
man,
could have been worse, I guess.
Yeah, that episode is right in the gutter, right in the toilet.
We went quick. I have Josh, one of the people that work here. He is an avid listener. Hi, Josh. He messaged me as he was listening to it about how bad it got, how fast.
That's right, folks. We bring you all the breaking news, even if it has to do with your camera on your toilet. So that's just a plug. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. That would go a long way. I think we're up to almost over 1,500 subscribers. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. Very nice.
Be great to get to the big 2,000 as soon as possible. But awesome. So I think that's all we have time for today. But thank you both for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. And until next time, stay safe, stay secure, and stay private. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts, follow us on X @SharedSec, and help support the podcast by joining our Patreon to get ad-free episodes, bonus content, and many more exclusive supporter-only benefits. Visit sharedsecurity.net/supporter for more details.